I Don't Go to the Coin Laundromat Anymore by u/Cannibal Birdies. A few months ago, I, 22, was at a local coin laundromat. I went late because I had been studying at around 10 p.m. The laundromat is pretty small and closer to the edge of the beach town that I lived in. The town is pretty well known for drifters and people experiencing homelessness. Most people are friendly, and there is a lot of drug use, but I've never really felt scared. Everything was fine until I went to move my laundry to a dryer. I was listening to music on my headphones, but not super loudly. But suddenly, I just got the feeling that someone was watching me, and I can't really explain it. I just felt the presence. I turned around and there was a man standing just a few feet away from me. He was a white guy with pink hair, wearing a full face mask, like a ski mask, a hoodie, gloves, and sunglasses, even though it was dark out. The gloves and the sunglasses especially immediately made me feel uncomfortable. I thought maybe he was a drifter or high, but I didn't want to be rude. I tried to laugh it off and told him that he surprised me. And he immediately started talking. A lot of it was disjointed and just didn't make sense. He was talking about coming up from Brazil to bring his brother money to get a classic car. And none of it made much sense. But he would ask me questions and wait for me to respond, so I tried to just play along. I still thought that he was probably just high or something, but he was standing between me and the only door, and I started getting this gut feeling that he was blocking the door on purpose, and not just accidentally as he talked to me. He was getting closer to me as he talked, and the feeling got stronger. Logically, something was off, but mostly, I just had this feeling in the pit of my stomach that I needed to leave and keep him talking until I could. I started to edge to the side, but he stayed in front of me, and the feeling got more intense. So, I started to grip my keys in an attack position just in case. He talked more, and then back off a little. He took off his backpack, which was a child's unicorn backpack, and set it on a nearby dryer. I looked over to the door for a second, and when I looked back, he was pulling something that I couldn't see out and holding it to the side behind him where I couldn't see it. But I did see what was in his backpack: duct tape. Instantly, it was just like an alarm went off. There was no more worrying about being rude, no more second-guessing myself that he was just off but harmless. It was like this cold, numb dread just washed down over me, and I almost felt calm, like I knew the next steps and knew that I had to do something. Time seemed to move in slow motion, and he turned back to me, not saying anything anymore, and took a step forward. I gripped my keys as tightly as possible and tried to mentally prepare to fight. And I remember being afraid that I would move too slow or be too weak, like in a nightmare. But all of a sudden, the door to the laundromat opened, and a woman walked in, barely even looking at us as she went to get her laundry. It was like a scene in a movie, a moment of intensity just interrupted by something innocuous, and suddenly, it's over. He just turned, got his bag, and left. I was so scared, I just stayed there for a minute until I could get my laundry and just go home. I didn't report it. I never knew what to say, since nothing had actually happened. But when I think about it, I think the craziest thing is that he left as soon as someone walked in. If he was just crazy, it wouldn't have mattered, right? I think a stranger's laundry timer saved me from something terrible. I don't go to the laundromat anymore. I joined the laundry service, and the extra cost is worth it to never go back. So, to the man with the pink hair and the unicorn backpack, let's not meet again.
I've been running in these woods for as long as I can remember, but this might make me change my mind. The story began at around 6:30 p.m. I had finished eating and decided to go on a run as usual. I always use the same path, cross the street, run for about 1 kilometer, and pass the gate that goes into the woods. Something important to note is that the trail I use in the forest is separated about halfway through. One path is paved and the other isn't. I usually go into the unpaved path first and then turn into the paved one after about 3 kilometers. Nothing ever really goes wrong. I meet some rare people walking their dogs, but other than that I'm pretty alone. At least I thought I was. I had been running for a while now when I heard a notification coming from my phone. An airdrop notification. Since I didn't want to make it look like I was worried, I kept running for a couple minutes and then stopped to change the music. I opened the airdrop dreadfully. Who the hell was sending me stuff? I was pretty sure I was alone. I clicked on the drop and my heart sunk. It was a Snapchat picture of me running with the caption, "You look good." I didn't turn around. Instead, I kept running like nothing happened until I reached a certain point. You see, the forest is surrounded by a fence to stop children from coming in unsupervised, and I didn't like that rule when I was little, so my friends and I cut a hole in it. When I was aligned with that hole, I quickly turned and buried myself into the forest, aiming for my escape. I could hear ruffling behind me, and I still didn't turn back. When I finally reached the hole, I jumped through it and absolutely booked it to the fire station that was a couple streets down. The last things I could hear when leaving the forest was an angry huff and metal mating metal. I still don't know who it was or what they wanted from me, but I never ran in this forest again. So, creepy stalker guy or whatever you are, I truly hope we never, ever meet.
Creepy Dude on a Bike by You Are the Host Pod. For context, I'm a 26-year-old male and have a larger build. Not fat, but also not muscular, just have a bigger look to me. I have lived an unusual life and had been through many iffy situations with people, so I am not frightened easy by odd or wacky people. I also can defend myself pretty well in a fight. I lived in a city with pretty bad crime and work on a sketchy side of town. While not the most crime-filled, it is still sketchy, and you get shady people once in a while. I also am a fan of the dark life, so I love walking at night and do not really get scared. I work a second shift job and it's my duty as one of the supervisors to lock the gates after the sun goes down and all the day shift people are gone. Our work is enclosed with a fence that has a barbed wire on top. Just a few days ago, I was walking to close the gate. I was coming from the far side of the parking lot after throwing something away in the dumpster, and as I was walking to the gate, I could see a strange man on a bike. It's dark and cold out this time of year at 8 p.m., so I found it odd to see a man that was at least 30 to 40 on a bike. But I carried on as it could just be a man going to work or leaving work who doesn't have a car. As I continue to walk, I see that he is now doing circles in the road at the end of that little driveway that leads to the fence. Now, my guard is up as this is strange to me. As I reach the fence, he has now set down the bike and is looking at me and walking toward me. He is shaking, like I have seen many people on drugs do before. But I'm still not super worried, as like I said, I have dealt with many shady people before. I close one side of the gate quick and rush to the other, swinging it close. The gate is locked by a chain and a padlock, so I grab both sides of the chain. And before I can get the padlock in though, the man sticks his hands through the fence and grabs me by my shirt. And at this point I yell, "Get the hell out of my face before I beat your ass!" As it was, I was holding the fence closed with the chains while he grabbed me and yelled, "I will kill you!" And the only thing going through my mind was how I was going to get the upper hand on this dude, and if I should fight him or wrap the damn chain around his neck. I was fortunate, and a police officer just turned the block as this was going on, and he flipped his lights on and quickly took the man down and cuffed him. While the man was in his car, he questioned me and got a statement, and I was on my way. So, to the druggie who wanted to kill me, let's not meet again. "23rd Floor Bathroom" by U/Punctuationist. 2 weeks ago was my first time working back in the office after working from home since the pandemic hit the US. On Thursday, a coworker that I needed to train had a prior engagement, so we agreed to come into the office from 2 to 7 p.m. and call it a half day. She had to rush out the door right at 7, so it was just me in this huge skyscraper that is about 20% capacity. The floor I was on was barren, and the 2 or 3 people I would see around had probably left for the day. It was about 7:15 and I was heading out. I stepped into the restroom before leaving, and that's where something creepy happened. When I walked in, the motion sensing light turned on. Immediately, I thought that I heard someone shuffling in there, which didn't strike me as odd at first. I went into a stall, but out of the corner of my eye, I glanced and noticed the next stall over had an indicator turned to a red that says occupied. Again, I didn't immediately register this as odd until I was in my stall. I looked down and noticed a shadow move in the stall beside me. That's when I realized, oh, the lights were off when I came in here. And I got a sinking feeling, but I told myself, someone must have been sitting here and the lights went off on them. I bent down to look under the stall and didn't immediately see feet or anything. I stepped out of my stall and still saw the red occupied indicator on the other one. Holding my breath, I reached out to push the stall, but my nerves got the best of me, so I just went back into mine. A few seconds later, the lights in the bathroom suddenly turned off. I freaked and stopped pulling my dress up and jumped in fear. Now, this part I'm not sure about, but maybe me being startled was the sound of movement, or there was a sound of rustling from outside my stall, but it really felt like someone rushed out of the bathroom. Then the lights were back on. I stood there frozen, too scared to leave but too scared to stay. I finally called a close male friend who also works downtown and had him on speaker, and I left the bathroom. Call me dramatic, but I'm a small young woman and I tend to err on action. I quickly threw on my backpack and rushed out of the building. When I got to the lobby, I was so shaky scanning my badge to leave that I missed the scanner a few times. and as I rushed past, the security desk attendant said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." I looked up and met eyes with that man, and I think if I was already pale, what little blood was left in my face completely drained. He was staring at me with an intense smile that made me wonder if he knows exactly what happened on the 23rd floor women's bathroom. I have a weak smile, and he said, "Be safe." I booked it out of there, and I went straight into a nearby bar where I waited for my friend to walk me back to my building to get to my car, which was parked in the parking garage. Anyways, I refuse to stay late now, and I work from home as often as I can. If I ever am in the office, I don't use the restroom unless it's a more full office. The Day I Stopped Being Afraid by you/Creepy Colombian. The story took place no more than 3 years ago. For a little background, I was with my then boyfriend from the UK as he had come to visit me and meet my family in beautiful Colombia. We haven't seen each other for a while, so I decided to buy a couple of plane tickets and take him from one plane to another at the very next day of his arrival. I did a lot of research since I wanted to show him a place that not even I knew and that we could both explore together. I chose this set of islands near the west coast of the country and at least 10 hours away from my hometown. The plan was to get off the plane, take a cab to a small coastal town, and from there, take a boat to the chosen island. We made it to the small regional airport on time, took our bags, and started asking around where we could take the cab that will take us to our next stop. We found a cab service that took us along with other people in a van, and after a couple of hours, we made it to the small fishing town. After getting off the van, we noticed that the sun was setting and no boat will take us to the island at that time. So we decided to find a cheap hotel and sleep for the night. After walking around asking in different hotels, we chose the cheapest one. It was a little gross, but we didn't care. We were all about the island that waited ahead. On the next day, after a delicious yet humble breakfast, we took our bags to the port, found a boat, and it took us to the little island that we wanted to go to. Our time in the island was lovely. We were almost alone and stayed at an eco-friendly hostel that took our breath away. The white sand beaches were clean since no more than 50 tourists were at the island at that time, and most of them locked inside a 5-star hotel that we found walking down the shore. After 5 magical days on this beautiful paradise, we were heading back. Money was running low now, and since I was the one paying for almost everything on this trip, I was struggling to keep up. We made it back to the fishing town somehow, and we still have yet one more day left. We searched again for a nicer hotel this time, somewhere we could actually shower and relax, and then got bored indoors. It was too hot to stay inside, so we decided to explore. This town was small in comparison with other Colombian cities or towns, but at the same time, quite overpopulated. More than 2,000 people lived there, and even though they all knew each other, it still felt a little crowded. The beaches in this town were not as nice as the islands, especially because the sand was dark, the ocean had brown and green colored waters, and it was dirty, since the amount of tourists from the other small town nearby was at an all-time rise. We did not want to bathe in those waters and started asking around where we could go for a nicer beach nearby. And many people agreed that there was this beach called La Playa del Frances, translated to something like the French guy's beach, and apparently it was cleaner, solitary, and romantic. We did not need to hear any more. We took a simple bag with our phones, sunblock, water, towel, wallets with money, and the hotel key. I was wearing this bag as a crossbody since it was an ethnic kind of bag that we use in Colombia called mochila. And it's basically one big bowl of fabric with a strap sewn or cut on opposite sides. It has no way to close up, so imagine you are wearing a grocery bag, but the straps are just one, and it's way longer. We started walking. The sun was scorching, and the sand felt like burning even through our flip-flops. I must admit, I was excited about exploring, but at the same time, many people warned us to be careful, that there was a lot of alleged robberies in the area, but this is an everyday thing in my country, so I didn't pay no mind. Every time I saw a guy or a group of guys, my heart would flutter. It's like having tiny little panic attacks every time you see a face coming out of the dirt roads. This was a very poor town, so I wasn't concerned about how the people looked raggedy and dirty. However, my heart fluttered here and there when I saw people, especially once the tourist area started fading out in the background, and we just kept walking towards the port and the more empty beaches. We noticed the sand getting cleaner, less trash, and also less people every time less. We saw this group of guys talking, and they stopped as they saw us and stared. I tried to remain calm and tried to look like I wasn't scared out of my mind. I asked with my strongest voice, "Excuse me, do you know how far is the French guy's beach from here?" One of them scoffed and replied, "You are a ways far. Maybe you should take a cab or a motorcycle." We did not want to spend yet more money on unnecessary expenses, and I had already started using my card since I was out of cash. So I just looked at him and said, "Okay, thanks. We'll keep walking and see what happens." We uncomfortably waved and kept walking. We noticed that as soon as we left, they did also, and were talking between themselves, but it wasn't possible to hear what they were saying as they were walking on the opposite direction. We kept walking through the beach. We saw the port coming up to us, and the beach in that area was closed. We were forced to take one of those dirt roads parallel to the beach and into the neighborhoods. What we didn't know is that we were walking right into the slums. My boyfriend back then was a very cheap guy, and I'm not saying everyone from the UK is, but this particular guy was. So we started fighting once I figured we were really far, but he didn't want to chip in for a cab ride. I got really upset and said, "You know what? Screw it. I have covered for everything on this trip and I am fed with it. We are heading back." He started arguing something like, "I already spent my money as well." To which I interrupted with another snappy comment, and so on and so forth. The fight got a little heated from then on, partly because of the intense heat and partly because my feet hurt since it was so hot and I started walking in front of him, getting further and further away from him. As we fought, we headed back towards the beach where we had come from, and just before we reached it, I saw this young scrawny guy standing next to a bush, right in the corner where we had to turn. I paid no mind since I was so upset and focused on fighting with my cheap-ass boyfriend. When we started getting closer, I noticed the guy was staring at us, and I just thought it was because we look exotic, a very white, blue-eyed foreigner and the dark-skinned Colombian with the long hair. I made it to the corner first, and I was about to mutter a weak good afternoon, since it was common courtesy in our land to do so. But the words died in my mouth as the guy quickly stood forward and jumped me. The movements were fast, and I only saw glimpses of what was happening. There was another guy, hidden behind the first one, and he also came forward, but this one went straight to my very scared and frozen in fear boyfriend. The first guy tried to grab my bag as he pulled this huge knife from behind his back. It was a long and wide silver blade, and it shone against the burning sunlight. He kept saying something like, "Give me the bag." By this time, I fell on the ground. The blow didn't do anything to me though. I was too concerned about keeping my hands around my bag, holding it tight against my chest. That bag held inside my brand new iPhone, the same that I just started paying for. Thoughts raced through my head. What was my boyfriend doing? The guy kept trying to pull the bag from underneath me as I cried, "No, please, no!" And he said, "Let go or I will cut you." I was rolling on the ground, hugging the bag as I saw the shine of the knife again. But this time, it went under me as he cut the strap and held the bag as well. He yanked the bag and I stood up as soon as I could, just to see him getting on a bicycle as the other guy was blocking my ex. This made me hate him at this point. That idiot was just held behind the other guy without even touching him. He was blocking him by just standing there, and my idiot ex just stood there as if he was being held captive by some invisible box. The second guy turned to see his friend getting on his bike and rushed to do the same on another bike parked behind the bush where they had been hiding. I did not hesitate somehow. I wanted to fight for that phone. It's hard to obtain such expensive items in Colombia, and I've worked really hard for the past couple of years to get a brand new one, and I was powered by pure hatred. I hated them. I hated the country. I hated the government, and I hated the fact that society's conditions have created such violence, such poverty, and deprivation, and I felt sick of it all. I wanted to bash their heads in. I wanted to be violent as well. They quickly took off on their bikes, and I took off running behind them. My flip-flops flew in the air as my first few steps hit the scorching hot dirt road, and the tiny rocks cut and hurt the skin on them. I was fueled by hatred then, and I ran like I never run before. At the same time I was screaming, there were people just standing on their precarious house doors. Some of them even came outside as they heard the commotion. I was screaming, "Stop them! They just robbed us! Help! Help!" I never thought I would say such a silly word. Believe me, in Colombia, people prefer to be robbed and head home feeling defeated afterwards. Hell, I've done it as well, many times in the past. This time, I was determined. I was tired of being a pushover for lousy crooks that were half my age. I would give it my all, and just as I had grabbed the bag like I was grabbing the edge of a cliff, I ran like I was being chased by Jason Voorhees. I ran and screamed for 2 blocks, and many people started screaming as well and pointing at them. But no one did nothing as soon enough. They started gaining terrain in front of me. They then turned around one of the corners down the road. I kept running as I saw them turn yet again on another corner. By then, they were too far and I couldn't follow anymore. I was heartbroken. I stopped running and I threw myself on the ground and started pounding on the dirt road, crying, screaming hysterically. I couldn't believe they robbed me so easily, in such a stupid way. How could I explain this to my parents? How could I even call them? People started walking towards and surrounding me, and my idiot ex-boyfriend arrived a few seconds later jogging slowly, trying to comfort me. But I wasn't having it. I cried as people asked me, "What did they take? What did you have in your bag?" Between tears I cried, "Our phones and wallets." But at this point, I realized phone robbery is so common it wouldn't matter at all. So I decided to lie. "And our passports, he's from England, and now how is he gonna go back?" They all started murmuring, while a huge luxurious truck appeared at the end of the road. A very heavy woman yelled right away, "They took their passports! There's the mayor!" Some other lady asked, "Anyone know who it was?" Then I heard another voice saying, "It was Miss Rosario's son. I saw him." The sounds were now getting confusing. There were at least 20 people around me, trying to comfort me and asking questions. The truck slowly rolled closer, and the heavy lady pretty much jumped in front of it. She was screaming too. "They took their passports! That's why we can't get enough tourists here from other places!" And more people started complaining to the mayor. I slowly stood up and looked at the man behind the wheel. He was a very heavy fellow, shaved head, no facial hair, and with a stern look on his face. He said nothing. There was a guy next to him. He seemed to be his secretary, and he did all the talking. He asked where we were staying at, what they took, and who it was, and I told him that I didn't know who they were, but the heavy lady interrupted me and repeated, "It was Miss Rosario's son, the one from the slums." The mayor remained quiet and just staring. The secretary then said to a couple of guys standing in the back, "Take them back to their hotel," and then looked at me. "We will let you know if we find anything." After they left, the other 2 guys took us back to our hotel on the back of their dirt bikes, and I felt defeated and weak. When we got back to the hotel, we explained on the front desk what had happened and the reason why we didn't have our key anymore. The owner, an elderly gentleman, walked us back muttering encouraging words and opened the room for us. I threw myself on the bed and cried. My feet were bleeding and my head felt like exploding. My idiot ex tried to console me, but I just scoffed and told him to let me be. I had to make phone calls now, cancel my cards, my national ID document, and all of that complicated stuff. A few hours passed. I calmed down, took a shower, and started thinking what was I going to do next. Then I heard a dirt bike, and after that, a call to our room. The front desk gentleman told us that there was someone looking for the couple, so we went outside. It was the heavy lady, riding a beaten-up dirt bike, and boy, was she upset. She kept saying that she hated when things like this happened and that the mayor needed to step up and make the town safe for tourists, because that was their whole life income right there, selling snacks, knickknacks, or beer to the tourists on the beach. She then saw the mayor's truck coming down the road and told me, "When he comes closer, we'll demand that he does something, or I'll do it myself." The truck came closer, and once again, when the window rolled down, I saw the stern look on that dark face again. He said nothing, but the secretary did. "We found the bag, but it didn't have any passports in it." And then he pulled my mangled bag, strap cut, but it didn't excite me. I muttered something like, "Oh, yeah, we checked and the passports were actually in the room. Thank God." He gave me a weird look and said, "This is all we could recover. Sorry about that, but people should really have warned you before you entered the slums." I meekly took the bag and felt the weight way lighter. I was not optimistic at this point. I muttered a quick thanks as the heavy lady kept talking about how this could never happen again, and that this is their town and they need the tourists to come visit, and etc. I just held the bag on my stomach, as if its warmth would make me stop feeling the emptiness inside, but it didn't. I then started walking towards the room again. I opened the bag just to make sure what they have left in it. And oh surprise! Cherub sang as I saw, at the bottom of it, my phone, with no case, just the plain phone, my cards and documents, no wallet of course, and the room key. I felt like screaming. I took it out and it was on plane mode, which made me assume that they tried to unlock it and couldn't since it had a passcode. I couldn't believe my luck. Up until this day, I still don't believe I got it back. It's so unlikely. It's like finding a green sapphire. The gentleman on the front office came towards me and said, "They were probably looking at your every move ever since you made it back from the islands. They knew where you were and when. Be careful in the future, would you, sweetheart?" To what I only replied with an automated, "Yes, sir, will do." I can't believe my screaming, crying, lying, and hysteria had worked on my advantage. My then boyfriend and I left on the next morning, counting our blessings, and headed back to my hometown. We didn't last for long after that trip, though. He wasn't strong enough for me, and I was already feeling invincible. I was a badass, and I wasn't going to be scared ever again. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.